Hey there, sinners. It's Adam Knox, and welcome to another episode of The Cult of You. Possession. Curses. Scary crap out there. Or is it? There's been a lot of funny little comments on different forums and groups that I've had the, great privilege to enjoy. And I've watched how people's own paranoia ends up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy for them. In today's episode, I want to tackle the subject of possession and spirits. And I'm not just speaking from an intellectual place, I'm speaking from a place of experience. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey and some of my things that happened to me and how I overcame them and the insights that I gleaned from that, and how these are useful resources and tools that you may utilize to immunize yourself against both factors. Sit back, relax, and remember, live deliciously. Like many others, I grew up in an environment which was wrought with religious propaganda. I remember some of the most ridiculous stories ever growing up. Stupid ideas that in some parts of this world still persist till today. Ideas like you shouldn't do meditation or yoga because that invites the devil. In fact, I remember friends of mine who were personal trainers and instructors that wanted to introduce yoga, just simple hatha yoga, to gyms, and the gyms not allowing them to do so because some of the people that went there were so religiously confused that they believed in just having yoga at their gym would invite the devil into their midst. It's funny, though, the unfortunate way of this and how much damage it causes psychologically and physically to people. And this is why it's so important that this rubbish gets eliminated. And here is why. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a personal story today, and it was one that happened to me when I was very young. I was about 16 at the time of it. And I grew up as a typical kind of goth metalhead kid into gangs and rebellious things, and a little bit of a bad boy, so to speak. Even though my mother was good intentioned, I was just a rebel from the start. And I suppose trying to find myself in that process, exploring different vantages of occult books and picking up everything I could read before having the benefit and the privilege of proper training and education and initiation. Even though I was starting my journey and I was getting into it, this was the early part of my experience and I wasn't very clued up on most of the different things. And it was very soon in that process where I started meeting other people and exploring different things. And at one point, I got to work with someone who I perceived as a light worker. I've had a conversation on this show with J.S. Gareth talking about the danger of light workers, and I want to explore that now quite a bit. This individual highlighted that a lot of the issues that I was facing was because I was demonically possessed. Being young and impressionable, I didn't know any better. She pointed out how different issues and problems in my life was proof of curses and proof of demonic possession. I had a simple right-hand psychology at that point, so I didn't like the idea of being demonically possessed and feeling that these forces had control over me. And it was very quickly that I started noticing them. They started affecting me and attacking me and having these events. And I then went through the process of an exorcism. And the exorcism was an enduringly painful process, both psychologically and physically on my body. And it pushed out pretty much a hotel of different entities, because as she got rid of one demon, the next one would show up, and I was legion, so to speak. And And she exorcised this entire hotel, and it was in a very dramatic event, and a very traumatic event, if I could rather say so. And I left there feeling light and good and in a relatively positive, although brutalized state. And I went home, and it wasn't shortly after that that all of this came back. And it came back worse, a lot worse. So bad that I turned away from what I was practicing in the magical cultures and traditions, and I ran to family, to the closest Christian church, because I needed to exorcise the demon. And I remember going there and sitting in these prayer circles and these prayer groups, and how the priests and things would say that they see these demons and these chains of hell and all this stuff around me. Keep in mind, I didn't practice left-hand path at that point in my life. In fact, I was the guy going, I think we should send light to all those evil Satanists out there. They need the Lord. Not exactly, but you get my drift. I had that hallucination of duality, of good versus evil. That was real for me at that time in my psychology. I kept going to that religious gathering, and people inside of the religious gathering considered me to be a prophet. And the reason they considered me a prophet is because, try as much as I couldn't switch it off. You know, I would sit in their circles and in their prayer circles and then they're singing, and going into a trance from this experience, I would see this man standing on the stage, and then I would say it to somebody, and they would go, oh, this is someone's grandfather. You're a prophet. You're blessed by the Lord. And it just got worse, and it got worse, and it got worse. And at one point, I'm sitting there, and this one is staring at me. And I just stepped outside, and I'm like, I can't deal. I thought I was going into this to get help, and it's just getting worse. I left. I ran. I was in the middle of an old town, and I remember I ran for probably like 4 or 5 kilometers, and I was frightened, and I was in a horrible place, and I couldn't deal, and I went back to the thing that I was trying to run away from, which at the time was spiritualism. I thought that spiritualism, my practice of spiritualism, my practice in the occult, was the thing that was making me, being affected by these things and going through this trauma and this drama and all the stuff, and now they're out to get me. And I went and I sat in the circle. I just moved into the group because I had nowhere else that I could go. Clearly, this exorcisms and prayers and faith and things was not working, was making it worse. I sat down, and for the first time, I felt calm. And I remember something that someone said to me before I ran away from all of that, before everything started getting extreme. They said to me, Adam, it's you. And I was like, no, it's not me. It's the devil. And they're like, no, it's you're the devil. It's all. None of that made sense to me. I didn't put it together at the time. And I sat there, and I remember there was a gentleman sitting in the left-hand corner of the room, and I looked at him, and as I looked at him, I saw him draped in black. And at first I was like, oh, it's the evil. And then I just, let me just go with it. And I just felt it, and I breathed it. And as I breathed it, I saw a Graham Hancock book, and I saw a bit of light come through. And I figure, what if this is all just symbolic? What if this is my mind trying to interpretate energy? How about I give up this good and evil, demons and evil stuff for just a moment? And as I did, the anxiety dissipated. And I kept looking at this individual, and I kept breathing. And then when we finished the meditation, they said, did anybody have any messages? And I said, well, you know what, I'm crazy probably anyway, or I'm going to howl, so let me just say whatever is in my mind, because who cares anymore? And I looked at this guy, I'm like, listen, I just want to say, I see this black around you, and I see this light, and I see this Graham Hancock book. And in my mind, that means you're busy studying books like that, you're busy researching this, but you just get an idea, and the second you get this idea, because that's what the light meant to me, you start rationalizing it, and your old habits kind of come back, because that was all the black kind of meant to me. And he stood there, he was astonished. He's like, how the heck did you know exactly what book I was reading? Because I still mentioned the book and the title to him. I was like, oh, I don't know. And I suddenly realized that what was happening to me was not that I was being attacked or being demonically possessed or anything like that. That demonic possession was the result of my beliefs. And me turning that, my practice in magic, because at that point I was practicing, the Hermetic system of the Golden Dawn. I was practicing the banishing rituals. I was working through the Michael Donald Craig books. I've just completed the entire station, just traditional witchcraft. It was now that I was coming into a practice where I was challenging my old religious indoctrination. And being an impressionable child, when somebody says to you, oh, this is this, and this is a principle of hypnotism. In hypnotism, I can use relationship to induce hypnotic states and create hypnotic loops in the brain. If I go, oh, you're showing this symptom, there's this symptom, you probably have COVID, your brain's going to go, oh crap, I've got COVID. And you're suddenly going to make evidence. Your reticular formation is going to activate, and you're going to see it everywhere in your world, and you're going to attract more of it because now you're drawn to it. And now you're going to make it more real. That's what was happening to me. You see, I had this false doctrine because of my, upbringing. And then when there were certain just mishaps, and the fact of the matter is I was just a teenager doing drugs occasionally, partying too much. So my life just wasn't good because I grew up in a bad place. That was then easy for somebody that probably meant well, but also operated from a lesser educated frame to go, oh, this is in their mind a demon. This is in their mind a curse. This is in their mind this. And because I was young and impressionable, my brain accepted the same links. It goes like, oh, that explains the pain. That explains the loneliness. That explains this. That explains that. That's why I can. Not because I just haven't developed the discipline, but, it's an easy. The brain will take the path of least resistance. Oh, this and this makes sense. It literally is that simple. If I give you an idea from 3 different vantage points, your brain goes, oh, it must be true. If I tell you, oh, did you know monkeys are actually, you get a pink breed of monkeys, you go, you're just full of crap. And then you go and you suddenly see a newspaper report, oh, there's this new breed of pink monkeys, or there's a breed of pink monkeys. And then you're out at a bar and somebody says to you, hey man, have you seen those pink monkeys? You just go, oh, no, but I've read about it. And then someone else, you like next in the context of a conversation, now you accept it as a possible reality. That's true of absolutely anything. And this is how we start producing realities, personal realities. And that's just it. I perceive these things in my world as good versus evil, and that I was vulnerable. And as such, I then opened myself to it, and they started happening in my life. These were aspects of my own infinite self that were being fragmented, and as a result, I got fragmented more and more because now I was judging parts of my own nature, and I was creating more psychic dissonance, and that's what was causing the pain in my psyche, not some demon torturing me or any rubbish like that. None of that actually happens in reality. It's just self-induced. The same way cancer exists in your body in a dormant state. And the only way it comes to fruition is when you offer it a supportive ecosystem. When there's poor blood circulation, poor oxygenation in your cells, this thing creates an environment for that to kind of come forth. The same thing with demonic possessions and curses and negative manifestations, or positions in a negative way. It's the result of us creating that psychic environment by buying into narratives that don't support us. You see, then I started working with this energy and I stopped judging, and I realized those narratives. It wasn't until later on in life that I was able to kind of really break free from a lot of the other indoctrinations that kept me in a reality where I was the victim of these things. And I mean victim of these things. I mean because I was open to the idea of being cursed and the idea of being possessed and the idea of these things. It was very simple for someone to just use a few words and put me in that state. It was very simple for somebody to just put that energy out there doing the ritual, and my psyche picking it up because we're all connected via entanglement. And then me doing the rest of the work, I get a bad feeling. I go, ooh, something bad's happened. Someone's cursed me. Instead of recognizing my power as a magician, as a sorcerer, and going like, oh, this is a frequency. I don't like it. I'm going to change it. And systematically developing a new psychology, a new model of reality that liberated me from those things. You see, when I started doing that, something interesting happened. As I was practicing clairvoyance and mediumism at the time as a spiritualist, I realized that I kept seeing this one black figure coming in, which I thought, oh, this was the demon. As I dealt with my issues, resolved my negative thinking and my belief of good versus evil, God versus the devil, and all this rubbish indoctrination, and I came to the philosophy that fundamentally everything is a manifestation of the eternal self, which some would refer to as God, some would refer to as the Ayin, or whatever your fundamental interpretation is of it, the Tao. And because I had that fundamental interpretation and I was open and not fearful, and you might kind of, I'll talk a bit more about that in an up and coming piece. But what happened is I was able to perceive the full range of the experience. It's the same thing as if you get into a fight. If you're in a fight and you're freaked out, you're nervous, you're the person hasn't just moved and you're already flinching, you're already closing yourself off to information. You're not present. If you're present, you can see that punch coming and you can do something about it. Versus being in reaction where you just can't, you're shut off. Now the same thing happened. That shift happened because my psychology shifted. And suddenly I saw this dark demonic figure that was over me was actually, when I was afraid, my passed over grandmother's spirit was trying to come in and hug me. But that energy coming through dark matter, coming through the material energy, coming closer to me because of her intensity and my intensity, made me perceive it as that. And I just shut off from the rest of the information. It's literally like a negative, like a photographed negative that was underdeveloped. But the second I could relax and I could give it the right energy without judgment and fear, it suddenly turned into, hey, Grandma. Oh, thank you. You've been there all along. Spirit's been here. I'm actually supported. The universe is not an evil, dark place. My belief changed. When my beliefs changed, my health started to improve. My energy, because my psychic environment started to improve. Suddenly positive things started showing up in my life. Suddenly my quote-unquote spells and magic actually started working, showing me results because I was no longer causing resistance. You see, when I was practicing sex magic or was practicing something, I started getting positive results because I wasn't getting shame attached to my practice. I wasn't having this fear of, oh, am I doing something bad, associated to my practice. When I did that inner clearing, I became immune to demonic possessions. I could practice mediumism and invoke any entity, any force into my body. And when I was done, and here's why. Because here's how possession works. Possession starts with obsession. If you start obsessing about something, you can't think about it. You can't stop thinking about it. That means you've lost control over it. That means it's an unconscious narrative or story or an unresolved need within your psyche that is there. And this is why even in the old Rosicrucianary magic tradition and the rituals of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, there's the statement, I'm the exorcist in the midst of the exorcism. That means when you change, it all changes. You see, the spirit or the frequencies can only match you when there is rapport. The people in your life right now are a mirror of your frequency. I'm sorry to say, but that's the truth. If you're getting curses and bad positions and bad things, you're the problem, not the other people. And as much as it may suck to hear that, because it sucked for me to recognize that, it's the truth. It's only until you change your identity, your vibration, that those things stop having. You've got to stop giving it an environment for it to grow. That's how it works. You'll see the same thing when mediums begin their training in clairvoyance and you begin the training of mirror gazing. What you'll see when you begin mirror gazing is,
I've always felt a little different, a little uneasy between regular folk, a bit of a dreamer, a lost cause, a little non-ordinary, some would say. I think I've always just been this way. My mother said I was special. My father thought I should be feared. But I knew that witchcraft coursed through my veins the first time I tasted the lips of the goddess inside the rain. Yes, I'm a witch, it's true. And sure, we are the ones who believe in the beauty of nature, who believe in the things science, absent of art, cannot explain, who instead of religion would have romance. And sure, you may think we have lost our way, when in the world of predictable things we have such unfamiliar things that we would like to say. But maybe in a world so cold and alone, a little unfamiliar is exactly what is needed to show us the way home.
Is what reflects within you. See, when I started with that, I was looking in the mirror and I would see, for example, this would look like a pirate, but without the patches, this black hole in his eyes. One spirit kept coming through, manifestation or whatever linguistic you want to utilize, to describe these events. And it kept coming through until I realized that it had a rapport. It was in vibrational match with me. And it was me that reflected that. I had the same qualities. I was unable to see within myself. I was unable to look within myself. Now again, whether you consider this the subconscious trying to communicate or the unconscious or spirit, again, that's something that's better explained when you understand the map of occultism and you can get past these, misconceptions. But fundamentally, that force, that energy, that quality was maintaining itself in my energetic field as a result of me maintaining that behavior. It was the moment I started being willing to look at my own internal narratives, because I was looking at myself, not just the other. I wasn't just looking outside. I would now look outside and inside and go, oh, what am I doing? What's my... That's when that spirit moved away. Once I resolved that entity had no rapport with me. And it's the same thing about all of them. If there's negative forces around you in your life, they're there because they can attach to your vibration, because you feel sorry for yourself. I'm sorry to say that, but this is the truth. If you have a victim mentality, then energies and forces that match that, are going to be attracted to it. They're going to find connection to it, and that's going to add to your thought processes, and that then leads to obsession, and that then leads to possession. So you can stop possession and you can end possession by changing your psychic attachment. You don't need an exorcist. You can be your own therapist, and as such release yourself from that level. Now, yes, in the magical cultures we go to more advanced tiers and there's more higher levels there, but it's the same thing as the philosophy of hacking. If you're just Johnny Two Stones, putting up a website, no serious hacker is really going to care about you. If you're a major bank and you're putting major energy investment, then you might get the attention of a hacking group, or if you're a government or something like that. The same thing's kind of true when it actually comes to the realm of curses and possessions and things like that. Most of these little wannabe things that are flung at you really only affect you if you are simply that open and that weak. In fact, the common cold will probably kill you anyway, simply because you're that vulnerable to something, to some propaganda. Now, I'm not saying you're like that. We all have weaknesses in our psyche. I mean, I had massive ones, if you've just heard. But we need to reinforce ourselves. We need to transform ourselves, because that's the thing that you recognize when you start going through those things. When I started realizing this, I started going into the mirror and looking at the spirits and going into feeling what negative energies were there. And I asked myself, what within me is opening this? This is the old Hakuhuna philosophy. If there's a tornado in the land, the Hakuhuna doesn't go, oh, there's a tornado. He goes like, where's the tornado within me? And he goes to work in shifting that. And as a result, the environment changes. And the same is true. As within, so about, as above, so below. Stop taking this victim mentality of that everything and everyone can harm you and hurt you. Because if you do, you're going to open yourself up to that harm. Now, I'm not saying be stupid. Be aware of what you're working with, but do the inner work. A professional martial artist recognizes if they're going to compete with a higher competitor, they're going to go and they're going to put in the training. They're going to get themselves ready for that fight. But they're not going to immediately give up in their psychology and make themselves vulnerable for defeat. The same thing is important here. The types of people that can truly swing powerful forces have no interest in doing so. It's the same as the adept martial artist that can really perform these things. He's not the one that starts the fight. In fact, he's the one that's the last one to do it. It's the ones that can't. Those are the ones that are throwing it around, because they're trying to bring that bravado, because they're compensating. And the same thing is true in the magical cultures. Anybody that's out there going like, oh, I'm going to do this, that's really sweet. But for the most of it, they're just angry kids in mom's basement. Real adepts that really have these abilities have no interest, because they've done the inner work on themselves and they're beyond this petty emotional rubbish. It's the same as the simple old mentality where they're trying to take dog and God, your choice of which was more accurate, and then bring it down to a personality human level, versus recognizing it's in all of us and everything. It's not limited to an ego. So it's not offended when you masturbate or when you do something wrong, because you're doing the absolute best you can with the tools you've got. It's like those are all perversions and misinterpretations of original text. And it's important to educate ourselves. I had to go on a very long journey to really study. In fact, I studied the Bible in its many different formats. I studied the Quran. I studied almost every single religion out there, so I could resolve these false narratives in my story. And that's become part of my teachings today. You may not have to do that, but you have to do the work. If there's indoctrination been in you at some level, if there's unhealed parts of you, the thing that's going to prevent all these things is just doing that work. You see, because if you're in a debate with somebody and you're not emotionally reacting to the debate, you've already won. Because there's no matter what they say, it just bounces off of you. You're the one, as Richard Bandler always said, he who feels the best always wins. And that's the same truth here. If you're attuned to different vibrations, that's it. This is part of the power of true left-hand path psychology. When I finally was mature enough psychically to enter the left-hand path, I suddenly could see these demons and these forces as the representative archetypes of these quote-unquote negatives, but my relationship with them was no longer in the mature. It was now in the mature. And I could see myself in the benefit. I now, when I worked with a Belial or Beelzebub, I was the lord of illness. In other words, I was no longer the victim of illness. Means I was no longer feeling disease coming into my body and going like, oh, I'm the victim, I need to get better. I was going, I'm the lord of this, I'm the master of this is my body, I'm in control. And as such, my illnesses were a lot more reduced, my pain and my suffering was a lot more reduced, and I was able to manage it a lot better because I wasn't approaching it as a victim. As such, I could do something about it, I could be proactive about it. There's other opportunities and things that open up as we start to work with these more advanced shadow dimensions of the self. But one of the core fundamental philosophies of the occult and the magical tradition is that all things are manifestations of the fundamental self. And we do not mean the ego or simply the personality, we mean the transcendent self. You know, the part of me that is within you, which is within all the trees, which many mystics would have called the Tao, the fundamental God, you know, whatever you want to choose, the dragon, it doesn't matter what your terminology is. That entangled quantum field that connects every single one of us, that 0 point, we're all that. And if you're all that, that means all these angels, demons, they're all parts of you. So technically, we're all possessed anyway by everything and everyone. The thing is where do we lock ourselves in through the process of identification? And that's the result of these narratives and stories. So when we change the narratives and stories, we change the spells that have been cast upon us, and we start consciously casting new spells over ourselves, new narratives, new stories into our world, into our ideals, through the practice of our art. We begin to take charge of our lives, and we free ourselves from the victim mentality, and we stop being slaves to other people's doctrines that are outmoded and died, and we're able to finally be a slave or a devotee to the only philosophy that matters, and that's the one in our own hearts. Because God, or Goddess, or the dragon, is within, and we need to be true to us. It was the moment that I realized that, you know, the universe is not playing dice. The moment I realized that, you know, God, quote unquote, wouldn't lead me to all this great enlightenment and great wisdom and great ideas just so he could say, got you, punished, going to hell. The moment I gave up this evil, rubbish, you know, Christian war ministry philosophy, I could see the divine as supportive and as loving, and that every part of my journey was guided. And the moment I changed that and I started seeing the universe as a good place, a supportive place, it became one. If you want to live deliciously, it starts by having a psychology and a philosophy that is delicious, that is whole, that says everything you want is available for you and that you're good enough for all of it, because you are all of it. And then you can see all these parts of your life and you realize all they are aren't good or evil. They're just aspects of you that's in the immature and that needs to be matured. And as you go through that alchemical process, you come into the intimacy, the unity within yourself that religion was supposed to do. Religion in its Latin root is a relegare, to reconnect. You know, it's one interpretation for it. Reconnect with you. Reconnect with you in the light and the dark, and see these aspects where they are and mature them. Because your Kali can be the destructive force, or she can become the goddess of time that helps you orchestrate and master music, linguistics, film, all that, because they all are subject to time. I hope this has been useful for you. I hope you've taken some good ideas, and if you've enjoyed today's discussion, if you got some thoughts, please give me a comment, give me a like, you know, all the stuff. Or send me an email to info@thecult, and I'd be happy to answer your questions. We're in this together, all of us. It's not about whose religion or tradition is right. It's about how do we create a better world together for our children and for those that are still here.
Hey family, it's Adam Knox here. Thanks for supporting this podcast and, you know, these ideas. I really appreciate free thinkers, you know, like yourselves, that are willing to challenge conventional norms and think for themselves and take on new challenges and look at new ideas. And as such, I want to say that if you haven't yet, if you
are looking at ways to improve your knowledge over the entire field, and you're looking at a regular feed of ideas and concepts to keep improving yourself, I'd like to invite you to sign up at the Cult of You. All my teachings and all my ideas are there for only $19 a month, and every month I bring you a completely new section of some of the most cutting ideas, and I'm constantly adding to that. So I'm constantly reviewing and adding more knowledge as I gain them, and you'll see a lot of the interviews and a lot of things that I do extend on some of the subjects that I cover inside of those areas. I do take quite a bit of effort to make sure that the filming is also quite good, and to give you not just a demonstration of rituals, but also talk you through the psychology behind them so that you're empowered to do them. And I cover every subject under the sun, from science to art to magic to all the different systems out there, from the Golden Dawn to the Western traditions to the Left Hand Path traditions. We discuss technology and technomancy. We discuss sex magic and seduction. We discuss so much more, from purely the mental aspects to how do you deal with the darkness when it comes up, as well as how do you take those things into business and into your romantic life, as well as what are the keys to make your magic work, as well as to unlock different degrees of spirituality. So if you haven't yet, please consider signing up at the Cult of You, and you'll be able to send me a mail and message there, and I'll be there to help you personally through mail correspondence and chat you and guide you through the entire process. And if you make it through the first year of the entire cycle and you graduate to the second year of the program, you're able to have direct sessions with myself and some of the members of my temple. And I look forward to helping you whether you go that route or not. Please keep enjoying these podcasts. Please share them with people that you think they're going to find value in them. Like and subscribe to the show. And please send me your messages to info@thecult-of-you. I would love to hear what are things that are important to you. What are ideas and concepts that this raised? Maybe this inspired you. Maybe this made sense to you. Maybe this opened up something. I'd love to hear that. Please talk to me and please share with me. Write in the comments and give me your ideas and concepts. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel, if you're only watching this on the YouTube channel, please head on over to Spotify and do subscribe. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, go check us out on YouTube. But please share these ideas and these concepts, and let's have a conversation. I'd love to hear from you. That's it for me. I'm Adam Knox. This is the Cult of You, and remember, live deliciously.